Give the call to the most honourable member for
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker. Well, the Housing Minister there studiously avoided the topic of this MPI. One wonders why she even bothered turning up, because the MPI refers to the threat to the tax treatment of negative gearing. Now, we know the Housing Minister wants to avoid any difficult debates and discussions because the cupboard is threadbare here on the government side with respect to any coherent housing policy or anything that would seek to help either first home buyers or renters. But this is about Labor's agenda to tax housing even more. And every time the Labor Party talk about taxing housing more by abolishing negative gearing and doubling capital gains tax, what they are essentially saying to the Australian people is housing needs to be taxed more, and somehow the logic of their argument is if you tax it more, it'll somehow be cheaper for people who are either buying or renting. Now, that would be the first time in the history of tax policy that taxing something more leads to a cheaper price. In fact, all you need to do is ask the members of the government to reflect on excise policy in this country, and successive governments have made a decision for health reasons, to decrease the amount of cigarettes and tobacco that's consumed in this country. So what have we done? Successive governments have increased the tax on cigarettes. Why? Because we want people to consume less of them. Well, quite simply, if you tax housing more, fewer homes will be built. Higher taxes equals fewer homes. So every time the Labor Party talk about abolishing negative gearing for mum and dads and doubling capital gains tax just on housing, not abolishing capital gains tax discount on other things, just abolishing the capital gains tax discount on housing, what they are saying is we want to tax housing more. And we know from modelling undertaken by Deloitte Access Economics through the Property Council that that is the exact consequence of abolishing negative gearing and the capital gains tax discount on housing. Higher taxes, fewer homes equals higher rents. So it takes some sort of genius to come up with a policy that's been rejected by the Australian people time and time again. In fact, was even rejected by a former Labor government who tried this and, when it disastrously failed, backflipped and reinstated these tax settings. It takes a special sort of genius to go down this path again, a policy that will simultaneously tax mum and dad investors more, would increase the rents for the Australians who are already suffering crippling rent increases, and through lower housing of stock make it even more difficult to buy a home. Now, the Shadow Treasurer, when he made his remarks in relation to this, highlighted the dichotomy here, that on one hand the Labor government want to abolish negative gearing and slash the capital gains tax discount for Australian mum and dad investors, therefore increasing the housing taxes for them, but simultaneously want to reduce the amount of taxes that large investment funds, including many foreign investment funds, Vanguard, Blackstone, big US funds, they want to reduce the amount of tax that they pay. Because the question here is, who owns Australia's rental stock? A third of Australians, give or take, rent a home. Someone's got to own those homes, millions of homes. Someone's got to own them. At the moment, mum and dad investors own those homes. Australian mum and dads who own overwhelmingly one property, who they invest in for their future and the future of their children, they want to tax them out of existence. Shame. So those homes are not owned by those mum and dad investors anymore. Instead, the Labor government want them to be owned by large foreign funds who own tens of thousands of those properties to rent out to Australians. So lower taxes for the foreign corporates and higher taxes for the mum and dad investors would be a disaster for this country, and is not a vision that we share. This government is bereft of ideas. Sadly, the Housing Minister, who was demoted from her former role, is a big part of the problem we are facing here, because on her watch she ramped up migration, more than 1 million people in 2 years, when we're building fewer homes more than 1 million people in 2 years when we're building fewer homes, and that's why rents are rising. Shame on Labor.
The honourable member for his contribution, and with that, I